Imagine this. A small hospital room, dim light spilling across pale walls. A child sits there, quiet, ordinary, harmless. And then he speaks. Not one language, not two. 10. 10 languages he had never studied, never heard, never learned. And in that moment, the world shifted around him, though nobody outside that room would ever know. Doctors scribbled notes like they were witnessing a crime. Their hands shook, their eyes flicked nervously between him and the charts. Parents clutched photographs as if they could anchor reality, as if a piece of paper could hold a miracle. But science didn't know what to do with him. Words like hyperthymesia or polyglot syndrome appeared in files, neat and clinical, but those were just polite cages for something that couldn't be contained. Behind closed doors, men in suits whispered about containment. In basement offices, something far darker was planned. Experiments, protocols, measurements, all under the guise of care. Each language the boy spoke was more than communication. It was a map, a key, a weapon, a prayer. He recited the names of cities he had never visited, the sounds of rituals long forgotten, secrets buried in manuscripts no living teacher could have taught him. And somewhere, beyond the hospital, institutions watched. Hospitals, orphanages, research labs, quietly, methodically, converting anomaly into data, curiosity into control. They cataloged his every word, his every breath, his every glance. Every moment was recorded, every utterance analyzed. And the child? He didn't know he was valuable. Not yet. I'm telling you this because this is dangerous knowledge. Once you hear it, it changes you. You can close your eyes, pretend it's just a story. Or you can follow me down the rabbit hole, past the official reports, past the redactions, into the places the world does not want you to see. This is where the truth waits, waiting to shape anyone willing to listen. Take a deep breath. We're starting now. The first hours were chaos, hidden beneath calm. Nurses tiptoed around him like he might shatter at any moment. Doctors spoke in jargon, trying to convince themselves that what they were witnessing was explainable. Retrograde recall, sudden polyglossia, acquired savant syndrome. Polite words for something that defied reason, but you could see it in their eyes. Fear, real, raw, gnawing fear. He didn't just speak. He named things. Names of cities that no map recorded. Names of people who had died centuries ago. Names of rituals erased from history books. And he said them naturally, effortlessly, as if memory itself had chosen him as its vessel. Words spread quietly, like smoke slipping through cracks. A pastor whispered about psalms in ancient dialects. A retired professor checked footnotes in old texts and shivered when they matched the child's words exactly. People began to murmur. Legends forming around a boy no one could explain. And the adults? They scrambled. Authorities suggested relocation, new programs, special care facilities. Men in suits, speaking quietly, decided where he would live next, who would have access, how he could be studied, controlled, even profitably observed. Meanwhile, the mother signed forms she couldn't read, unknowingly opening doors she didn't understand existed. Each signature was a hinge, swinging the boy further into the custody of systems bigger than any family could fight. Social workers, psychologists, linguists, all circling, all fascinated, all trying to extract what they could without admitting that they were terrified. And yet, the boy was unaware, innocent, curious. Every word that fell from his mouth was a challenge to the order the world insisted on. Every syllable was a crack in the walls institutions spent decades building, walls that said, "You cannot have this. You cannot understand this. You must look away." But here, right now, you are looking, And that is dangerous, because looking is the first act of awareness, and awareness changes everything. The family, they became the center of the storm. In the small kitchen where the boy first spoke, the mother hummed lullabies that no longer sounded entirely familiar. Sometimes the tunes shifted on their own, bending into cadences she didn't recognize, rhythms from somewhere far beyond their home. The father, practical, weary, tried to translate the impossible into protection. Move, hide, change names. But protection costs more than money, and truth has a way of following even the cleverest disguise. Neighbors whispered. Then they stopped, pretended the house was ordinary, as if ordinary could erase the extraordinary happening inside. But the boy did not stop. He spoke in tongues, in accents, in syllables that belonged to other fathers, other mothers, other streets that smelled of spices they had never known. His words carried histories the family couldn't touch, histories no one had taught them. Letters surfaced in old books, crumpled, yellowed, hinting at arrangements no one had expected. Charities, foundations, programs, all quietly connected. They weren't helping, they were investing. Every donation, every grant, every support was a way to track, control, and shape the boy's extraordinary mind. Even the people they trusted, teachers, social workers, psychologists, became part of the ledger. Small favors, promises of grants, recognition, a sense of doing good, and yet each one chipped away at the family's ability to protect him. Slowly, the child became a commodity, measured in potential rather than nurtured as a human. Siblings grew wary, playing games that quickly became tests of loyalty. The family learned early. Survival required secrecy, precision, and a quiet surrender to forces they could not see. Stories at the kitchen table were edited. Lullabies and photographs became shields. And yet, despite every measure, the boy continued to speak. Every wabaru, ord was a spark, and every spark threatened to ignite the fragile order around them. They were learning unknowingly what it means when an anomaly touches a world that cannot contain it. The question loomed, silent but constant. Who will claim him first? The family who loves him, or the institutions that see him as power waiting to be harnessed? And here's the truth. No one outside that house can admit. Sometimes love is not enough. Sometimes just knowing what's real changes everything. Language is more than words. Language is power. And this boy, he wasn't just speaking, he was unlocking doors. Doors no one had walked through in centuries. Phonemes that matched inscriptions in lost archives. Words belonging to merchants long dead. Chants used in ceremonies erased from history books. All of it flowed effortlessly from his lips. Experts arrived, each trying to claim a piece of the miracle. Linguists, historians, cryptographers. They traced his words to sources that shouldn't have existed. A sailor's slang from a city erased by floods. Ritual chants preserved only in marginalia. Every syllable was a key, and every key revealed hidden networks. Orphanages, clinics, seminaries, foundations, systems quietly shaping children like clay. But power always notices anomalies. Institutions don't break for miracles. They adapt, they catalog, they monetize. The boy's languages became data, patterns, property. Researchers documented, analyzed, and then passed the results up chains of command. And somewhere at the top, men decided how much of his mind could be accessed, and who would pay to access it. A historian tried to publish the findings, to reveal the threads linking the boy's words to centuries of hidden knowledge. The response? A careful email. Funding contingent on a softer narrative. He complied, and just like that, the story was watered down, safe for the public eye, sanitized. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, the real work continued. The boy's gift was catalogued, measured, tested, and prepared for the next stage, whatever that stage might be. You need to understand this. Knowledge is never neutral. When an institution encounters something it cannot own, it classifies it, repackages it, and controls the narrative. The boy's speech wasn't just remarkable, it was dangerous. Dangerous to the comfortable illusions of science, to the polite assurances of history, to the hidden systems built to profit from anomalies. And now, as you listen, you're stepping closer to the same truths they tried to hide. Pay attention. Every word he spoke is a breadcrumb, leading to corridors that governments, foundations, and secret societies would prefer you never enter. But you are here. You are watching. And that changes everything. Now listen closely. Silence can be louder than any scream. In the boy's case, entire stretches of correspondence vanished. Between hospitals, between foundations, between government agencies. Names were changed. Files were shredded or rewritten. Invoices rerouted. It wasn't negligence. It was design. A whistleblower once described it plainly. Bury the anomaly under a mountain of normal. Think about that. If the public record is a city, silence builds the alleys the powerful walk through unseen. Experiments become programs. Programs become policy. And you're supposed to believe it all happened by accident. The boy himself became a living archive. Every utterance, every syllable, every pause, recorded, coded, and stored in databases that no one outside the inner circle could touch. Words that could have been taught in classrooms, shared as culture, were parceled out to labs, private contractors, and secretive foundations. They turned his gift into a resource, a commodity, optimized, refined, controlled. The family watched helplessly as care became conditional. Every letter, every offer of support came with strings. Even the professionals around him, doctors, linguists, social workers, had their own subtle pressures applied, each one a tiny piece in the machinery of extraction. They measured compliance, they tracked responses, they tested loyalty. And here's the pattern you need to see. The beneficiaries of this system are never the ones who first suffered. They are the ones who patent the solution, who control the narrative, who monetize what the world calls a miracle. That is how morality degrades under power. Altruism becomes enterprise, and enterprise becomes dominion. You're listening now. That alone makes you dangerous to the system. Because awareness is the first act of resistance. The next layer is darker still. You will soon see how the anomaly, the boy, his speech, his mind, is not just observed, but shaped, trained, conditioned. And the closer you look, the harder it is to pretend innocence still exists. This is where it gets darker. The boy wasn't just observed, he was trained, sessions disguised as therapy, exercises disguised as play, rewards measured not for joy, but for compliance. Every gesture, every word, every breath recorded, analyzed, and optimized. They wanted to see how far they could shape him before the mind resisted. Contracts with private firms read like a cross between clinical trials and purchase agreements. Every step of his learning was cataloged, every success monetized. Experts measured him not as a child, but as an instrument, a living, breathing repository of anomalies. And here, right now, you have a choice. This is not a gimmick. If you understand what it means to step into forbidden knowledge, type the phrase, "I am awakened," twice in the comments. Twice, not once. Twice. Because ritual matters. Repetition locks attention. Attention bends perception. Participation transforms you from passive witness to someone awake, someone who can see through the polished facade of institutions that harvest anomalies for profit. Back to the boy. His speech patterns were optimized, tested, and repeated under controlled conditions. He learned to anticipate responses, to perform, to please, and in doing so, he became a tool, a vector of information, a node in a network of people who understood the value of anomalies far better than they understood compassion. And yet, resistance persisted. Sometimes, he refused. Small acts, tiny rebellions. Those moments are the most telling. The system, elegant, relentless, methodical, seeks obedience, but autonomy survives in the margins, in the whispered syllables, in the hesitation before a response. Now, as you watch this, recognize the pattern. Institutions can observe, measure, and manipulate, but they cannot make you see what you choose not to see. And awareness, that fragile, dangerous awareness, is the first real step into freedom. There's a strange intersection between research and ritual. In a quiet annex of the hospital, tapes captured the boy repeating phonemes in loops while sensors mapped the spikes in his brain. Technicians adjusted stimuli like priests tuning sacred bells. The language of study began to sound like incantation, repetition, reinforcement, carefully controlled context. Scholars debated ethics. Technicians debated outcomes. Somewhere between those debates, the unknown became a resource to be harvested, and harvests carry histories. Words he spoke aligned with ceremonial texts used by secretive groups, words believed to open doors, doors of memory, doors of lineage, doors of authority. Private collectors with interests in esoteric linguistics funded programs. Their donations weren't generosity, they were access, and access breeds influence. The boy's utterances were copied into restricted journals, then into private repositories. Invitations to see them were only given to men who believed themselves stewards of knowledge. Stewards, yes. But notice this. Stewardship without transparency is control disguised as guardianship. Knowledge curated becomes identity manufactured, autonomy measured, loyalty tested. And the boy was at the center of it all. Every syllable he spoke became data, every pattern a test, every pause an assessment. Those who controlled access to his voice were shaping not just research, but the human mind itself. Influence spread quietly through networks, contracts, and quiet approvals. One day, a word spoken in that annex could ripple across classrooms, laboratories, even entire institutions, all without anyone outside the inner circle ever noticing. This is the machinery of secrecy, and it is efficient, patient, and absolute. Every anomaly a child carries can be flattened, catalogued, and folded into a ledger. The boy's mind was extraordinary, but extraordinary minds attract extraordinary interest, and not all of it benign. Now, remember this. Secrecy is curated. It is not accidental, it is deliberate. And understanding how it works is your first step in seeing the systems that manipulate knowledge, children, and even history itself. Evidence accumulates in the strangest places, a scribble on the back of a contract, a margin note in a lab report, a line in a donor's ledger. Alone, they seem trivial. Together, they reveal a network, hospitals, private think tanks, foundations, all quietly connected, all quietly moving children like pieces on a chessboard. A researcher traced one thread from the hospital to a think tank, from that tank to a foundation funding children's language programs across multiple countries. Personnel rotated, programs merged, transfers occurred quietly, and these children, anomalies like the boy, became part of a pipeline, carefully monitored, catalogued, optimized, and always controlled. The moral calculus is cold. Find the rare, refine it, patent it, monetize it. People with influence shape the questions we are allowed to ask. They fund the answers, framing them to serve their interests. Knowledge, when privatized, becomes power consolidated. The boy's case was cited quietly in policy proposals that never passed, then circulated in training materials shared among elite circles. If no one outside reads the reports, the system continues unchecked. Whistleblowers who tried to expose the truth were met with procedural roadblocks, confidentiality clauses, polite compliments that disguised subtle threats. Notice the pattern. Niceness is a tool. Polite words, bureaucratic procedure, well-meaning tones, all can be deployed to neutralize resistance. And the boy? He learned compliance, not choice, not freedom, compliance. This is what power looks like when it meets Anomaly, and it's not just institutions. Networks of private interests, hidden donors, academic enclaves, all observing, all measuring, all deciding who benefits, who watches, who is allowed to speak. The boy's voice was no longer just a gift. It had become currency, weapon, and data. And as you listen, you are, lo, earning the same truths they sought to bury. The machinery is precise, patient, and silent, just like history itself. The question is, will you see it before it shapes you? There is a cost to every extraction, a price paid in silence and stolen time. The boy's gift didn't just fascinate institutions, it consumed his childhood. Play became protocol. Laughter became optional. Every word he spoke was measured, catalogued, optimized. Every glance, every pause, recorded as if he were data instead of a human being. Adults around him negotiated identities. Researchers for study continuity, social workers for family reunification, funders for proprietary oversight. And in all of it, the boy's sense of self was fragmented, stretched across dozens of agendas he couldn't understand. He became a mosaic of expectations, a subject, a symbol, a solution. In private therapy notes, there are lines that read like confessions. He resists when asked to perform. Resistance. That tiny act, that hesitation, is the last honest thing he possesses. The system seeks compliance. Autonomy is costly to those who rely on obedience. And yet, despite conditioning, he resists. Small acts, almost imperceptible, but enough to remind the observers, some things cannot be owned. Even the family was reshaped. The mother learned to negotiate survival instead of protection. The father learned to steady his voice instead of expressing fear. Siblings learned that curiosity could bring danger. And the boy? He learned that every word carries consequences, every voice is a ledger, every gift is a liability. This is the machinery at work when institutions encounter the extraordinary. They will catalog, optimize, and monetize it. And the human being at the center becomes secondary. The anomaly is extracted, packaged, and deployed. Childhood becomes a ledger. Innocence becomes a resource. And yet, here is the cruel truth. The very same systems that can extract and control also demand compliance from the rest of us. They rely on silence, on the assumption that nobody will trace the threads, follow the breadcrumbs, or see the pattern. But you're here, you are seeing it, and that changes everything. Now, after everything you've heard, a choice stands before you. You can turn away, return to ignorance, and feel comfort in pretending this was just a story. Or you can hold this knowledge and let it change you. Because awareness is dangerous. Awareness is transformative. Awareness asks questions that no one once asked, shines light into corridors they prefer to remain dark, and forces you to see the machinery behind the miracle. The boy, his words, his gift, his stolen childhood, is a warning and a lesson. Every syllable he spoke opened doors, and every door revealed not just what is possible, but who controls possibility. Those in power do not yield freely. They do not give insight lightly. They protect, silence, and monetize the extraordinary. And now you know. Knowing is not enough. You must act. You must see between the lines. Read the reports they redacted. Follow the money. Question the experts. Track the anomalies they sweep under the carpet. And above all, protect what cannot be commodified, humanity itself. Remember the first moment he spoke 10 languages. That sound, impossible, profound, terrifying, is the echo that follows you. It reminds you that history is not merely a record. History is a field of power, a battlefield for attention, influence, and truth. And those who understand the rules, those who see the patterns, hold a rare advantage. You have listened. You have observed. You have stepped closer to knowledge that changes the man who bears it. Keep it sharp. Keep it alive. Let it guide you, and let it remind you that power is never neutral, miracles are never free, and awareness is the first step toward mastery. Because now, you are awake, and the world will never look the same again.